from an Adam and Eve time, and Adam and Eve them have children and thing, and them go on thing. Them go on bad, and God never liked the way how man was going on.
What if I told you that some of reggae's biggest legends had secret kids they never planned to raise? From Peter Tosh's son Tosh 1, who followed in his father's footsteps before dying tragically after a prison beating, to Bob Marley's daughter Maka Janesta, born just weeks after his death and later arrested for growing weed in her basement. These are 10 illicit love children of old reggae stars. Rohan Marley. Back in the early 70s, when Bob Marley was already married to the famous Rita Marley, he had a secret fling with a teenage girl named Janet Hunt. Out of that affair came a boy named Rohan Marley. Rohan was born on May 19, 1972, in Kingston, Jamaica. He was the result of a love affair outside of marriage, a quiet scandal at the time. Janet was just 16, and Bob's relationship with Rita was still very much public. But behind the scenes, this baby boy marked one of the reggae icon's many complicated family ties. Rohan bounced between homes during his early years, living with his young mother on and off. But after Bob's death in 1981, when Rohan was only 9, he went to stay with his grandmother, Cedella Booker, Bob's mother. His life then took a very different path from reggae. Rohan ended up in Florida, attending the University of Miami, where he played football, hard-hitting linebacker style. In fact, in 1993, he led the whole defense with 95 tackles. After college, he played briefly in the Canadian Football League, suiting up for the Ottawa Rough Riders in 1995. But the Marley name eventually pulled him back into the spotlight in other ways. In 2009, he co-founded Marley Coffee, an organic coffee company based in Jamaica's Blue Mountains, though most of the beans came from Ethiopia. The brand grew quickly, and by 2011, it went public under the name Jammin' Java. Rohan also helped create eco-friendly headphones and speakers with the House of Marley line. Like his father, he kept his roots tied to music, culture, and business. He also played a role in running the Marley family's charity, One Love, and the Tough Gong clothing brand. And just like Bob, Rohan's love life was far from simple. While still in college, he married his girlfriend Geraldine Cawley, and they had 2 children together, Eden and Nico. Nico followed in his father's athletic footsteps, and even signed with the Washington Redskins in 2017. Then came Lauryn Hill. Rohan met the Grammy-winning singer in 1996, and their connection ran deep. They had 5 children together, including Sela and Joshua Omaru Marley, who now goes by the stage name YG Marley. The pair never married and often lived apart, with their relationship officially ending in 2009. When Lauryn served a short prison sentence in 2013 for tax issues, Rohan stepped in to care for the kids. That same year, he briefly got engaged to supermodel Isabelle Fontana, but it didn't last. Then in 2019, he married Brazilian model Barbara Fialho. They had a daughter named Maria, but the marriage lasted only a year. Terrace Riley. Terrace Riley is a well-known reggae artist, loved for his smooth voice and conscious lyrics. But before he was topping charts and collecting awards, his life began with a story that many people don't know. He was born out of a secret affair, far from his father's home. His father, Jimmy Riley, was already a respected reggae singer by the time Terrace came into the world. Jimmy had made his name with the group The Uniques, and when the band split up, he started working solo. He recorded songs with Bunny Lee, produced tracks for artists like Slim Smith and Delroy Wilson, and had hits of his own, with songs like Tell the Youths the Truth, Naya Bingji, and Clean Up the Streets. During the 1980s, Jimmy worked with the legendary duo Sly and Robbie and kept his name alive in the reggae scene. But it was in the middle of all this success, while Jimmy was touring the United States, that he got involved with a woman in the Bronx, New York. That relationship, outside of marriage and outside of Jamaica, led to the birth of Omar Riley. He was Jimmy's love child, born away from the spotlight and outside of the singer's official life back home. Although Terrace was born in the US, he was raised in Jamaica, where he grew up surrounded by reggae music and Rasta culture. He naturally followed his father's path into music, and his rise to fame ended up bringing new life to Jimmy Riley's name. In a way, the son's success helped shine a light back on the father's legacy. Terrace Riley became one of the most celebrated reggae singers of his generation. He's won award after award, including Best Singer, Male Vocalist, Cultural Artiste, Song of the Year, and more. Groups like the Youth View Awards, the Star People's Choice, the EME Awards, and the Reggae Academy all gave him praise. In 2009, he dropped his third album, Contagious, which featured hits like Start Anew, Contagious, and Good Girl Gone Bad with Conscience. Terrace became a regular on the international stage, performing yearly in Europe and appearing at top reggae festivals. Some of his most talked about performances were at the 2011 Jamaica Jazz and Blues Festival, Reggae Sumfest, and Roskilde Festival in Denmark. And just when people thought he might slow down, he came back strong in 2020 with the massive hit Lighter, a collaboration with producer Ervisien and dancehall star Shensia. The song became one of the biggest anthems in the Caribbean and all over Jamaica. Julian Marley. Julian Marley may carry the famous Marley name, but his story isn't as clean and polished as it seems on the surface. He was born outside of Bob Marley's marriage as the result of a quiet relationship Bob had with a woman named Lucy Pounder while he was still married to Rita Marley. This makes Julian one of Bob's illicit love children, and the only one of his sons born in the United Kingdom. Raised in England by his mother, Julian spent much of his early years away from his father's world in Jamaica. But he wasn't kept in the dark. He grew up surrounded by music and always made trips to visit his brothers in Jamaica. From a young age, Julian showed signs that music was in his blood. He taught himself how to play bass, drums, guitar, and keyboards. And by the time he was just 5 years old, he had already recorded a demo in the Marley family home in Kingston. Even though he moved between England and Jamaica, Julian eventually settled in Miami, Florida, where the Marley family owned a recording studio called the Lion's Den. Though his roots were in Jamaica, he often said that his British upbringing shaped his style and musical expression. He once said, "I feel privileged to be part of the musical roots that my father, Bob Marley, laid in England. I look forward to sharing the cultural gifts and musical creations that he has given me." In '93, Julian moved to Jamaica full-time. That decision brought him closer to his brothers and sparked a movement. Alongside Stephen, Damian, and Kaimanai Marley, he helped form the Ghetto Youths Crew, a music collective built around the idea of family, unity, and reggae roots. Inspired by reggae pioneers like Aston Barrett, Earl Lindo, Tyrone Downey, and Earl Smith, Julian soaked up the knowledge of the legends who played alongside his father. After the tragic murder of Wailers drummer Carlton Barrett outside his home, Julian channeled his pain into his music. He wrote 2 unreleased songs, Uprising and What They Did Wrong, as a tribute and protest. He later formed a band called The Uprising, made up of young Jamaican musicians, and together they opened shows for his brother Ziggy Marley and the Melody Makers. Julian also got the chance to perform with the Wailers, this time with Carlton Barrett's son on the drums, keeping the Marley-Barrett connection alive. Julian's talent wasn't limited to live performances. He played guitar on Lauryn Hill's Grammy-winning album, The Miseducation of Lauryn Hill, which they recorded at Tough Gong Studios in Jamaica. Then, in 1999, he joined his brothers Stephen and Damian in the studio once again to work on the platinum-selling remix album, Chant Down Babylon. The project brought together rock and hip-hop artists to reimagine Bob Marley's classics for a new generation. Damian Marley. Damian Marley is a name that many reggae fans know. But what most people don't talk about is how he came into the world, not just as Bob Marley's son, but as one of his illicit love children, born outside of marriage while Bob was still married to Rita Marley. Damian's mother, Cindy Breakspear, wasn't just any woman. She was a Jamaican jazz singer, and in 1976, she was crowned Miss World. But long before her name was known around the globe, Cindy was just a young woman living at 56 Hope Road in Kingston with her brother. That address would change her life. Behind their building, Bob Marley and the Wailers rehearsed every day. Cindy remembered it clearly years later. She said, "In the comings and goings, we started chatting. The conversations became longer, sparks started to fly, and we became romantically involved." At the time, Bob was already on the edge of becoming a worldwide star. And though he was still married to Rita, he started a relationship with Cindy that lasted 5 years. From that relationship came a child, Damian. But Bob wasn't there when Damian was born. He was on tour. And at first, Damian had a different name. Bob later asked that it be changed after watching the horror movie Damian, Omen 2. As a Rastafarian, he didn't want his child sharing a name linked to the devil, so they changed it to Damian. Even though he carried the Marley name, Damian didn't grow up with Bob. The person who shaped him, protected him, and loved him every single day was his mother, Cindy. She raised him on her own. She was the one who taught him right from wrong, gave him love, and made sure he felt safe. But life wasn't easy. Damian didn't just carry the Marley name, he carried the weight of a complicated story. Everyone knew Bob was married when he was with Cindy. People judged that. They judged Cindy for being the other woman. And those whispers didn't stop after Bob died. Damian grew up in that silence, in that judgment. Cindy had to build a home from pieces of a broken story, holding on to strength no one saw, just to protect her son. And yet, despite the whispers, despite the past, Damian Marley grew into a man who made his own mark in music. He became one of the most recognized Jamaican musicians of his time. With the backing of his father's label, Tuff Gong, he released his 1996 debut album, Mr. Marley, which surprised many who were unaccustomed to hearing Marley DJing rather than singing. The album was released on 11th of September 2001 and received the 2002 Grammy Award for Best Reggae Album. It was co-produced by Damian Marley and his brother Stephen Marley, who had also produced Damian's debut album, Mr. Marley. He didn't stop there. At the 2006 Grammy Awards, Damian Marley made history. He didn't just win one Grammy, he walked away with two. Welcome to Jamrock earned him the award for Best Reggae Album and also Best Urban Alternative Performance, making him the only Jamaican reggae artist to win two Grammys on the same night. No other reggae artist had ever taken home a Grammy in the Urban Alternative category before him. Kaimanai Marley. Kaimanai Marley didn't grow up like a prince, even though he carried one of the most powerful names in reggae. He was born on February 26, 1976, in Falmouth, Jamaica, outside of Bob Marley's marriage to Rita Marley. His mother, Anita Belnavis, was a local sports hero, known across the Caribbean as a champion table tennis player. But unlike Bob's famous wife Rita, Anita wasn't part of the spotlight. She stayed quiet, raised her son, and later moved to the United States. Kaimani's name means adventurous traveler, but his early life was no easy journey. When he was just 5 years old, Bob Marley died, and despite being Bob's son, Kaimani was shut out of his father's estate. He and his mother left Jamaica and moved to Liberty City in Miami, a neighborhood where struggle was part of everyday life. Instead of hearing roots reggae in his home, Kaimani grew up listening to hip-hop, rock, and pop on American radio. He liked sports as a kid. He played soccer and American football and tried to live a normal life. But music slowly found its way into his world. His mother made sure he got piano and guitar lessons, and in school, he even played the trumpet. Kaimani's first step into the music world wasn't backed by the Marley estate. He had to do it on his own. In 1996, he signed with Shang Records and dropped an album called Like Father, Like Son. One of the most emotional songs he released was Dear Dad, a letter to the father he never truly got to know. That track touched hearts and climbed to the top of the British reggae charts. By '97, his name was catching attention. He teamed up with Pras from the Fugees and the Refugee Camp All-Stars to remake Eddie Grant's Electric Avenue into the hit Avenues. His talent started opening doors. He got signed by G Street V2 Records and even worked with PM Dawn on the song Gotta Be Movin' On Up. Kaimani didn't just stop at music. He moved into acting and starred in movies, including Haven alongside Orlando Bloom. He also released several more albums, one of which got a Grammy nomination. While Bob Marley's marriage to Rita was public and celebrated, Kaimani's mother stood alone, raising her son far from the Marley mansion, with no help from the reggae empire. If you are enjoying this video, appreciate it by giving it a thumbs up. And if you have not subscribed, what are you waiting for? Hit that subscribe button. Omar Perry. Omar Perry's story began in Kingston, Jamaica, back in 1968. Omar is the son of a reggae legend, but not from a storybook family. He was the child of Lee Scratch Perry, the wild genius of reggae and dub, and a woman far from the spotlight. While Lee Scratch Perry was known all over the world for his music, his life was also full of chaos, creativity, and secret relationships. Omar was one of the children born outside of his marriage, a quiet piece of a loud, unpredictable legacy. As a boy, Omar grew up inside music. At just 6 years old, he and his little sister Marcia were already singing on their father's records tracks like Thanks We Get and Ram Goat Liver. He saw reggae greats like Bob Marley, Max Romeo, and Junior Murvin walk in and out of the famous Black Ark studio. But even with all that talent around him, his father wasn't always there in the way a young boy needed. Lee Scratch Perry was too busy being a pioneer and a madman of sound. Omar, like many of reggae's hidden children, had to find his own way forward. As a teenager in the 1980s, he started a small group with his brother Sean and sister Marcia. They called themselves the Upsetter Juniors, a nod to their father's old nickname, but also a way of carving out their own path. They played little shows, released one song called Positive Vibration, and even started their own label. But by 1990, the group faded away, and Omar was left with big dreams and no clear roadmap. So, he learned the craft from the ground up. First, he worked as a sound engineer in a small 4-track studio. Then he moved up to an 8-track setup, and finally made it to a 24-track studio at Junior Reid's One Blood Studio, where he worked with artists like Tyrone Taylor and Big Youth. Slowly but surely, he built his own name, step by step. In 1996, Omar left Jamaica and followed a dream that had been with him since childhood. He went to Africa. He spent 4 years in the Gambia, spinning reggae on national radio, playing clubs, and performing in small villages. He became a reggae ambassador in a place where few knew his name before he arrived. But Africa wasn't the end. In 2000, he took another leap, this time to Europe. He settled in Belgium, bringing with him all the fire, knowledge, and love for reggae that had been brewing since he was a child. In Europe, Omar made his name as both a DJ and a performer. He played festivals like Couleur Café, opened for legends like Buju Banton and Alton Ellis, and worked with big reggae producers like Mad Professor and Mafia and Fluxy. He also teamed up with French producer Guillaume Briard, and together they created Omar's first album in 2006. Since then, Omar Perry hasn't stopped. Jawara Macintosh. Jawara Macintosh, better known as Tosh 1, was born into a reggae family. He was one of the many illicit children of the legendary Peter Tosh, a reggae rebel who never married but fathered 10 kids across different relationships. Jawara was born in Kingston, Jamaica, to Melody Cunningham. When Jawara was just 5 years old, he moved with his mother to Boston, Massachusetts, where he would grow up, far away from the center of reggae music. 2 years later, tragedy struck. Peter Tosh was murdered, and that loss would shape Jawara's life forever. At 7, while other kids were playing outside, Jawara was writing down his thoughts, trying to make sense of the pain, confusion, and the questions no one could answer about his father's death. He grew up listening not just to his father's fierce lyrics, but also to the sounds of Bob Marley and Bunny Wailer. The music helped him feel connected to the island and the culture he came from. And as he got older, something inside him started to burn, a desire to continue what his father started. His first serious moment came when he remade his father's song, You Can't Blame the Youths. Tosh 1's first live performances came in places that had once seen his father perform, like the Paradise Rock Club in Boston and the Hut Tin Roof in Martha's Vineyard. He was unknown, but his energy, his lyrics, and his message hit people hard. On those stages, he didn't just cover Peter Tosh songs, he revived them, adding his own words, his own fire, and his own pain. In 2005, Tosh 1 started to really make waves. He opened for reggae giants like Sizzla, Gregory Isaacs, Shabba Ranks, and Damian Marley. He even shared the stage with Sinead O'Connor, backed by Sly and Robbie, and toured with heavyweight dub champion. By 2013, Tosh 1 was doing what he believed his father would have wanted. He spent much of the year attending rallies, speaking out for legalization and spreading his father's revolutionary message about justice, freedom, and truth. But while he was following in Peter Tosh's footsteps with his words, his life was heading down a very different path. On June 15, 2013, everything changed. Tosh 1 was driving through Mahwah, New Jersey, when police pulled him over. What began as a regular traffic stop quickly spiraled. Officers said he was driving recklessly, had open alcohol in the car, and was behind the wheel with a suspended license. But the biggest shock came when they popped open the trunk. Inside were 65 pounds of illegal substances. stashed in 3 large bags. It was a moment that shattered everything Tosh had worked for. He was arrested on the spot, charged with possession with intent to distribute, and thrown behind bars. He spent over 6 months in jail, waiting for his case to move forward. In August 2016, he pleaded guilty and was sentenced to 1 year in prison. For a while, it seemed like he might make it through the sentence, serve his time, and start again. But fate had other plans. In January 2017, just a few months into his sentence at Bergen County Jail, Tosh 1 got into a violent fight with another inmate. He was badly beaten, and the injuries to his head were so severe that he fell into a coma. He never woke up. Months later, he passed away. Makeda Janesta. For a long time, hardly anyone knew about Makeda Janesta Marley. She wasn't in the spotlight like Bob Marley's other children. In fact, she was born just weeks after Bob died in May 1981. Her mother, Yvette Crichton, had been one of several women Bob was romantically involved with toward the end of his life, alongside more well-known names like Cindy Breakspear and even Pascaline Bongo, the daughter of Gabon's president. Makeda's name didn't come up in the early years, and many fans had no idea she existed. But according to Bob Marley biographer Meredith Dixon, Makeda was legally acknowledged as Bob's daughter, and in 1992, over a decade after his death, Rita Marley finally recognized her, and Makeda was added as one of the official beneficiaries of the Marley estate. But life didn't come easy for Makeda. When she turned 18, she received a trust fund from her father's estate, but it didn't last. Years later, she admitted in court that she had spent it all and was working as a waitress just to get by. In 2008, she made headlines for the wrong reasons. Police showed up to her Philadelphia area home during a domestic dispute, and instead of finding just drama, they found dozens of illegal plants, far more than anyone could call personal use. She was arrested and later pleaded guilty, spending a few weeks in jail. Still, Makeda didn't let that moment define her. Today, she's embraced her Marley roots in her own way. She runs an illegal substance business in New Jersey, works as a DJ, and speaks publicly as a motivational speaker. Andrew Tosh. Andrew Tosh was born into a reggae family, but not the kind that's neatly written. He's the son of Peter Tosh, the outspoken whaler and rebel, and Shirley Livingston, the sister of Bunny Wailer. Their love wasn't part of any public union. It was quiet, intense, and in time, it brought Andrew into the world. A child born out of a bond between 2 reggae bloodlines, Wailer and Tosh, but never raised with the fanfare of a traditional family. Peter and Shirley's story took a tragic turn just 6 years later. The two were involved in a terrible car crash. Shirley didn't survive. Peter, though still alive, was left with serious head injuries. Andrew lost his mother far too soon, and his father, already a complicated, larger-than-life figure, became even more distant, consumed by his battles with the world. But music was always around Andrew. His father, his Uncle Bunny, and even Bob Marley were part of the air he breathed. His first steps into music came in 1985, when he recorded Vanity Love, with the help of reggae DJ Charlie Chaplin. Just 2 years later, Peter Tosh was murdered, and young Andrew stood at his father's funeral, singing Jah Guide and Equal Rights. He didn't stop there. In 1989, Andrew's album Make Place for the Youth was released in the US and even earned a Grammy nomination. He toured with the Wailers Band in the early 90s, and over the years kept his father's music alive, even recording an entire album called Andrew Sings Tosh. He never died. He continued to record and release music well into the 2000s. In 2010, he dropped Legacy, an acoustic tribute to Peter Tosh, which included a duet with Kaimanai Marley and a track featuring his Uncle Bunny Wailer. It was nominated for a Grammy too. By 2011, Andrew was back in the studio working on a new album, Eye to Eye, featuring more collaborations and more of his father's spirit. Gramps Morgan. Gramps Morgan was born into a large family. His father, Denroy Morgan, was a reggae legend known for his hit song, I'll Do Anything For You. When Denroy passed away, he left behind 1 wife, 30 children, over 100 grandchildren, and more than a dozen great-grandchildren. But not all those children were born inside marriage. Gramps is one of the most well-known among them. Gramps was born in Brooklyn, New York, and grew up in Springfield, Massachusetts, raised by his mother Pearl Foster, who was not Denroy's wife. From early on, music was in his blood, but so was sports. Gramps was a star football player in high school and had offers from colleges all across America. However, he later chose the path his father walked, even if their relationship was complex. In 1994, Gramps joined 4 of his siblings, Peta, Una, Lukes, and Mr. Mojo, to form the group Morgan Heritage. Together, they became one of the most powerful family bands in reggae, known for their deep-roots sound and strong messages. Gramps played keyboard and sang vocals alongside his brother Peta. Morgan Heritage has released 12 albums, including the Grammy-winning Strictly Roots in 2016. They've been nominated for more awards over the years, even working with artists like Shaggy and Sting. But Gramps didn't stop there. He also launched a solo career that showed a different side of his talent. In 2009, he released his first solo album, Two Sides of My Heart, and followed it with Reggae Music Lives in 2012. He worked with big names like India, Ari, Buju Banton, John Legend, and Terrace Riley. His voice crossed borders from reggae to gospel to R&B, reaching listeners all around the world. His 2020 single, People Like You, even won Best Gospel Song at the International Reggae and World Music Awards. By 2021, Gramps dropped his 3rd solo album, Positive Vibration, featuring artists like India, Ari, Shaggy, and his own son Jamere Morgan. What do you think about the Children of Stars? Let us know in the comments section. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and check out our next video for more reggae stories.